Carl Jung said that the most dangerous person in your life is the one who agrees with everything you say. Think about that. The people who love you most, your friends, your family, they have every reason to protect your feelings and zero reason to tell you the truth. But your enemies? They've been studying your weaknesses since the day they decided they didn't like you. They know exactly where you're soft. And that, counterintuitively, makes them one of the most valuable mirrors you will ever have. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how to extract brutal, accurate self-knowledge from the people who can't stand you, and you're going to walk away with a 3-step framework for turning enemy criticism into a competitive edge that most men never find because they're too busy defending their ego to actually grow. Here's why this matters right now. We live in an era of validation. Social media is engineered to show you people who think like you, agree with you, cheer for you. Your friend group does the same thing, not because they're bad people, but because social harmony requires that we soften the edges. The result is that most men are walking around with massive blind spots, patterns of behavior that are sabotaging their careers, their relationships, their health, and nobody in their inner circle has the nerve to say it out loud. Meanwhile, your enemies already know. They've already mapped the territory of your failures. The question is whether you're man enough to listen. Friends protect your ego. Enemies protect nothing, and that asymmetry is where the truth lives. Marcus Aurelius, as Roman emperor, surrounded himself with Stoic advisors who were paid essentially to tell him hard truths. But he also kept detailed records of criticism from political opponents and rival senators, men who wanted him gone. In his Meditations, he writes about using contempt from others as a kind of calibration tool. He didn't dismiss it. He asked, "Is there a grain of truth here that my court wouldn't dare say?" The mechanism is incentive structure. A friend's social currency with you depends on maintaining warmth and goodwill. An enemy has already burned that bridge, they have nothing to lose by being accurate. That makes their critique structurally more honest, even when it's delivered with malice. Malice doesn't invalidate information. Strip the emotion out of what an enemy says about you, and what's left is often a very clean signal. What your enemies hate about you is almost always something real, the distortion is in the delivery, not the data. Abraham Lincoln was openly mocked by political rivals for being awkward, indecisive, and too soft to lead a war. He didn't dismiss it entirely. He used it. He hired rivals into his cabinet, what historian Doris Kearns Goodwin called a team of rivals, specifically because men who thought he was weak would push back harder, and harder pushback produced better decisions. His enemies' contempt became the friction that sharpened his leadership. This is what psychologists call the kernel of truth principle. Even hostile criticism is usually anchored to something observable. The enemy exaggerates, they weaponize it, they frame it as fatal, but underneath the venom there's usually an accurate observation. A man who's been told he's arrogant by 3 different people who all dislike him should not dismiss all 3. He should ask, where is this coming from? What behavior is generating this read? The friction they feel is data about how you're landing in the world. Jung's shadow principle, what you most despise in an enemy often reveals what you've buried in yourself. Think about the man who absolutely cannot stand a coworker he calls a shameless self-promoter. He talks about this guy constantly. He's obsessed with how much credit the guy takes. But here's the question Jung would ask, why does it bother you so much? Often the answer is that the quality we find most intolerable in others is a version of something we've suppressed in ourselves, ambition we were told was wrong, confidence we were punished for showing, desires we learned to call shameful. The enemy who enrages you most is holding up a mirror. Jung called this projection, the unconscious act of seeing your own disowned traits in someone else. It works the other way too, the things you project onto enemies tell you what parts of yourself you've locked away. This isn't soft psychology. This is practical intelligence. If you can get honest about what triggers you in specific people, you get a map of your own suppressed potential. The rage you feel at a man who speaks his mind without apology might be pointing at the version of yourself that got quiet because speaking up once cost you something. Enemies track your consistency in ways your friends don't bother to. Seneca wrote to Lucilius, "Retire into yourself as much as you can." But he also warned against assuming that solitude gives you accurate self-knowledge. We are, he argued, terrible judges of our own conduct because we see ourselves through intent. We know we meant well. An enemy doesn't care about your intent, they track your behavior over time. They notice the pattern you repeat. They remember the contradiction between what you said you valued and what you actually did. Machiavelli, brutal as he was, made the same observation in The Prince: your opponents study your moves with more discipline than your allies because they're looking for the gap they can exploit. The mechanism here is attention. Your friends forgive inconsistencies because they're emotionally invested in the whole you. Your enemies catalog them because inconsistency is a vulnerability they can use. Flip it, your enemies are essentially running a continuous audit of the gap between who you say you are and how you actually behave. That audit, if you can access it without getting defensive, is extraordinarily useful. It shows you where your self-image has drifted from reality. The man who can hear hard feedback from hostile sources without collapsing or retaliating has a cognitive advantage almost nobody has. Epictetus, a former slave who spent his entire life being told he was worth nothing, built an entire philosophy around the idea that other people's opinions are outside your control, but your response to them is not. He didn't say ignore all feedback. He said, sort what is in your power from what is not. The insult is not in your power. What you do with the information underneath the insult, that is entirely yours. The man who can do that sorting in real time, who can take a hostile attack and ask, is there anything here I need to know, instead of immediately defending himself, that man is operating at a different level. This is emotional regulation meeting epistemic humility. Most men fail at one or the other: either they're too reactive to hear anything from someone who dislikes them, or they're so self-doubting that they absorb every criticism as truth. The Stoic move is a third path: receive the information, strip it of the emotional charge, assess it on its merits, take what's useful, discard the rest. That's a learnable skill. It just requires you to value self-knowledge more than you value being right about yourself. 3 things to take with you. First, your enemies have no incentive to protect your ego, which makes their critique structurally more honest than the approval of people who care about you. That's not an insult to your friends, it's just how incentive structures work. Second, what enrages you most about specific people is often a projection of something you've buried in yourself. Use it as a map, not a verdict. Third, the man who can extract signal from hostile feedback without collapsing into defensiveness or dismissiveness has an edge in self-knowledge that compounds over time. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal of hard truths. Lincoln kept his enemies in the room. Epictetus turned contempt into philosophy. None of them let flattery be their primary feedback loop, and none of them let hostility be their reason to stop listening. If this resonated, subscribe. We drop one every Tuesday and Friday. And if you know someone who's spent too long surrounding himself only with people who agree with him, send him this video. It might be the most useful thing he hears this week.